Okay, Chair Rob, we are live on YouTube.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, January 26, 9:01 a.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Will staff please call the roll?
Chair Rob.
Here.
Linda Fox.
Here.
Betsy Aiello.
Here.
Jim Barnes.
Here.
April Caron.
Here.
Leslie Biddleston.
Here.
Jennifer McClendon.
Here.
Tom Verducci.
Here.
Janelle Woodward.
Here.
And Michelle Kelly.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Jack, I think you're muted.
Did everybody not hear me say agenda item number 2, public comment? Was I muted?
You were muted.
Sorry. I was waiting for somebody to come in for public comment. We're going to go to agenda item number 2, public comment. Will staff, public comment is limited to 3 minutes. So any individuals wishing to make public comment, please state and spell your name for the record. And will staff please bring in first public comment?
One moment, Chair Rob. For those who have called for public comment, your name or last 4 digits of the phone number will be announced, and you will be advised you have been unmuted. As a reminder for those on the phone, please press *6 to unmute. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record and then proceed with your comments. Kent Irvin, you have been unmuted. You have permission to speak. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record.
Good morning, Director Rob, Executive Officer Rich, and committee members. For the record, Kent Irvin, K-E-N-T-E-R-V-I-N, State President of the Nevada Faculty Alliance, the statewide association of professional employees at Nevada's public colleges and universities. We work to empower our members to be fully engaged in our mission to help students succeed. PEB benefits remain a core part of overall compensation for state employees and an important recruitment and retention tool. With a vacancy rate of 25% across state agencies, the state is struggling to provide essential governmental services to the citizens of Nevada. It's an employment crisis. Governor Lombardo's executive budget restores some of PEB's pre-pandemic benefits and places them into the base funding, which is good progress. However, there are significant benefits that have not been restored or fully restored. Compared with the pre-pandemic FY 2020 plan design, for the high deductible plan, the out-of-pocket maximum increased by $100. The HSA contribution per employee was reduced by $100, and the HA contributions of $200 per dependent has been eliminated. For the EPO HMO plan, a new deductible has been added along with increased copays and a new 20% coinsurance for some services. For all 3 plans, the actuarial value has been reduced by 2 to 3 percentage points. The employee premium for a single employee in the cheapest high deductible plan option has been raised by 50% for this fiscal year versus FY 2020. The basic life insurance benefit was reduced by 40%. Most distressingly, long-term disability insurance has been completely eliminated and not restored in the governor's budget. Because state employees are not covered by Social Security disability either, that means that each one of us is just one diagnosis or one injury away from having no income stream. According to the Social Security disability website, a 20-year-old today has a 1 in 4 probability of becoming disabled sometime during their career before retirement. The excess reserves generated this past year would have more than paid for the LTD benefit. We asked the PEB board to work with the legislature, as we work with the legislature, to fully restore PEB benefits to the pre-pandemic levels. State employees who have worked on the front lines through the pandemic and are now taking on excess workloads due to the high vacancy rates, they deserve to have their benefits fully restored. Fully restored benefits will also help with recruitment of state employees, including NSHE professionals, although of course compensation also has to be increased substantially for state employment to become competitive again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next public comment, please.
One moment. Thank you. And Brooke Maliff, you have been unmuted. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record.
Good morning. My name is Brooke, B-R-O-O-K-E, Maylath, M-A-Y-L-A-T-H. I would like to thank and commend the executive director and the board for the amendment of the upcoming PEB master plan that has brought coverage for medically necessary gender affirming treatments to the standards that are mandated by the Affordable Care Act and with Nevada statutes. The inclusionary amendment is going to save lives and provide for a quality of life that can only benefit the state in general and the state employees in particular. And as happy as I am to be able to see these kinds of changes, I would like to be able to see some further transparency and identification for the section that says that the utilization management service is going to apply industry standard requirements and guidelines to be able to approve these kinds of procedures. There's a lot of different kinds of those policies that are written, and they don't necessarily all align. As such, I would recommend that either the United Healthcare Gender Dysphoria Treatment Medical Policy, the policy number is 2023-20580M, which can be used, or the master plan could reference the WPAS Standards of Care version 8 that was published in September of last year. It is the most current version of Standards of Care, either one of which could be used, and they would help the patients that are seeking for this kind of life-affirming procedure to be able to understand and follow what the issues are, what are the pre-authorization issues that must be met in order to be processed and granted the coverage for those particular procedures. This can only help plan, it can only help the individuals that are needing this medically necessary coverage. So transparency works, transparency helps. If that can be provided, I think it would be extraordinarily beneficial. Thank you again. Let's work together to see what we can do to be able to make this efficient for all. And with that, I finish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment, please.
Caller with the last 4 digits, 4108. If you have permission to speak, please press *6 to unmute if you wish to make public comment, and slowly spell and state your name for the record.
Yes, hi, good morning. My name is Joanne Operario, Joanne-Operario. I am the nurse manager for Sierra Healthcare Options Prior Authorizations. I was requested by HealthScope Benefits to attend the meeting in regards to any clinical questions as far as the prior authorization list is concerned, which will be, I believe the prior auth list will be included in your MPD for the next year. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to attend this.
Thank you for your comments. Next public comment, please.
Carly, you have permission to speak. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record if you wish to make public comment. Caller with the last four digits 9199. You have permission to speak. Please press *6 to unmute your phone, and please slowly spell and state your name if you wish to make public comment.
Good morning, members of the committee and Chair Rob. For the record, my name is Tess Opferman. That is spelled TESSOPFERMAN, and I'm speaking on behalf of the AFSCME retirees, Chapter 4041. We are pleased to see that in the governor's recommended benefits, recommended budget, he did restore some of the benefits to PEB to pre-pandemic levels. In particular, we're pleased to see that some of the life insurance benefits were returned to pre-pandemic levels and put in the base funding. So we're happy about that. However, we do know that benefits need to be as strong as possible, and across the board, PEB and other state agencies are continuing to face an employment crisis. We know it's about a 25 to 30% vacancy, and we're concerned that this could go even higher with the governor's recommendation that all employees need to be returning to in-person workplaces. So across the board, we want to continue to be looking at these benefit packages and ensure that we're attracting the employees that we want to be working for PEB and for the state, and we also need to be looking at salaries in general. So that's something that the AFSCME retirees will be working closely with our legislators during session, and we encourage you to do the same, and we will look forward to working directly with you and with our legislators throughout this upcoming session. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and I'll look forward to hearing your meeting today.
Thank you for your public comment. Next public comment, please.
Douglas Unger, you have permission to speak. Please slowly spell and state your name.
Doug Unger, D-O-U-G-U-N-G-E-R, President, UNLV Chapter, Nevada Faculty Alliance and Government Affairs Representative, and member of the UNLV Employee Benefits Advisory Committee. Good morning and a warm NFA welcome to Director Jack Robb, new chair of the PEB board. We look forward to working with you in the coming years. Thank you to members of the PEB board for your service. As we launch into this new year, Governor Lombardo's new administration and the 82nd legislative session all seems pretty much as expected with PEB. We're grateful that plan designs at least maintain a consistency in deductibles, out-of-pocket maximums, most services, and premiums. We also welcome the modest improvement in dental coverage and the addition of a cancer concierge. One issue that may need to be addressed is the almost certain inflation in provider contract costs this coming year when the proposed employer contribution has been cut by $25 per member. We hope PEB does not risk a budget shortfall. Still pending is the restoration of long-term disability insurance, which in a state that opts out of Social Security feels like a breach of trust not to provide its employees, especially Nevada faculty who have no coverage at all. The expensive private option has not filled the need for most, and elimination of state-sponsored long-term disability insurance is one more small yet significant reason added to woefully inadequate compensation that is causing state employees, numbering in the thousands, to leave state jobs for better opportunities. As with most state agencies, PEB's most urgent challenge right now is short staffing. I'm afraid the governor's recommended 8% and 4% COLA over the biennium is at best a half measure. It won't fix understaffing issues. COLA will need to be significantly higher to make a difference. As well, the governor's mandate to work in person in state offices will drive yet more employees away. In the post-pandemic 21st century, remote work is a reality, proven to be equally, if not more productive. Remote work can be an attractive benefit for so many good employees. We hope the governor will be more flexible about this mandate so as to optimize state agency chances of hiring and retaining qualified workers they urgently need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Unger. Next public comment, please.
Mark Thornton. Sorry if I mispronounced that. You have permission to speak. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record. Oh, actually, I'll move you over as a panelist in a second, Mark. You could go ahead and mute your mic. Sarisa Greer, you have permission to speak. Can you slowly spell and state your name if you wish to make public comment? I'm going back to Carly. Carly, you have permission to speak. Please unmute your mic if you wish to make public comment. For those who have had technical issues, there will be another public comment section at the end of this, at the end of the board meeting. Chair Rob, that concludes public comment.
Thank you very much. We close public comment. We'll move on to agenda item number 3, PEP board disclosure for applicable board members and meeting agenda items. Do we have a representative from the Attorney General's office that can read that disclosure statement?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much for this opportunity. For the record, Chief Deputy Attorney General Mike Detmer. This item is agendized to allow me to make a disclosure for NRS 2818.420 regarding conflicts of interest on behalf of the board members who are eligible for PEB benefits. On behalf of the board members who are eligible for PEB benefits, I offer this disclosure that they will be voting on items that may affect their benefits available to them or their family members. The law does not require their abstention from voting merely because the board member or their family member is eligible for PEB benefits. At this time, I would invite any member of the board to provide any additional disclosures to do so now. And I thank the chair for the time, as well as the board.
Thank you. Any further disclosures need to be made today? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, consent agenda. All of these items are for possible action. All board members should have a list of the consent agenda. Is there any items in the consent agenda that need to be pulled for further discussion?
This is Betsy Aiello, and I just really have a quick question on 4.3.5.
Okay, so we'll hold that. 4.3.5, Willis Towers Watson Individual Market Enrollment and Performance Report. So we'll pull that off the consent agenda. Any other items need to be pulled? Seeing none. Go ahead.
Tom Verducci, for the record, I'd like to pull 4.2.1, the budget report, and 4.3.6, the Sierra Healthcare Options PPO network.
Okay. Any further items need to be pulled? Seeing none, can I get a motion from somebody recognizing the rest of them will be passed with polling 4.2.1, 4.3.5, and 4.3.6. Do I have a motion?
This is Leslie. I move to approve all remaining items that were not pulled.
Second?
This is April Karn. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Biddleson, and second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimous. Can we have staff go over 4.2.1, the budget report?
Tom Verducci, for the record, I had pulled that item, and I would just like to get an update on the differential cash. I know we started spending it down, but where are we in terms of the differential surplus cash available? I believe what I'm reading in the report is somewhere around $19 million, but I wanted to get a clarification on that.
Good morning, Tom.
Go
This
ahead.
is Carrie Eaton for the record, Chief Financial Officer. In this report, it does show a projected amount currently at $23 million. That's where we're projecting to end the year. But as you know, this is just the first quarter and it is all based off of claims utilization and things like that. So it can fluctuate up and down throughout the year, which is why we don't really, have a set amount until after the year closes.
So as of last September, were we at 19 million as a projected amount, or projected was 23 million and actual was 19 million. So we are spending down from the reserves. Is that correct?
Correct. This is Carrie Eaton for the record. I believe we began the year with about 33 million and we are spending that down.
Hey, Ms. Eaton, thank you so much for the clarification.
Thank you. We have a question on 4.3.5.
Yes, Tom Verducci for the record. That was also one that I had pulled. I had a question regarding the network pricing turnaround time. I know that we had a target of 97%, and it looks like the target was missed just slightly. It came in at 96%. And I just wondered if I might be able to get an explanation on that, and if there was any performance guarantees that were tied into that.
I believe we have someone from the network representing. I don't know if Nathan or Rhonda or someone from the UMR team wants to speak on that one.
The UMR team is having an issue getting in, so they're going to be calling in shortly.
Okay. So we can come back to that one, but Mr. Verducci, there is a performance guarantee associated with that, and so typically those will be assessed in those performance guarantee failures. There's some kind of penalty associated with it, and so those will be assessed on the vendor each time they do not meet that requirement.
Is that an automatic assessment, or does it require board action?
Typically, it is an automatic assessment. The only exception to that is when we do audits. And so those are typically brought to the board. And there are times when the board has taken action to make an exception, to maybe not assess that. The board can certainly choose to make an exception in this case and not assess that penalty, but typically we would assess that penalty automatically.
Yes, because it's awfully close, and I kind of wanted to hear what the justification was, and if there was some perhaps some other reasons behind it that were out of their control. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We have a question on 4.3.6, Sarah Healthcare Options PPO Network.
Actually, this is Betsy, and I thought that my question was on 4.3.5 WTW, and that one I was just a question on page 6 of the report, just trying to understand the claims processing payment precision. It says that the commitment's greater or equal to 98%, but then it said results are not reported on benefit accounts. But then it says the goal was met. So that just didn't make sense to me, that line, if I could understand that better.
Sure. So I think we have Mr. Garcia representing Willis Towers Watson on the line. Chris, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Laura. This is Chris Garcia with Willis Towers Watson. I'm here. So with that particular measure, so back in 2019 or leading into 2019, we changed HRA administration platforms from a company called Payflex over to a new company called Benefits Accounts. That measure, the claim processing payment precision measure, was a measure that was originally contracted when we were under Payflex. So unfortunately, under Benefits Accounts, they don't have a way to get that measure. And so when we do the, if we're up for the new contract, when our current contract expires with Nevada PEB, we'll work to get that measure removed. So I believe you're correct, though, in saying that the performance guarantee met. It says yes. That's a little confusing. It should probably be more like NA, so that it's not applicable, and we can get that report updated to reflect that.
That would make more sense to me. Thank you.
Yes, I understand. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garcia. Have the questions on the remaining consent agenda items been answered significantly enough that we do not have to wait for the individuals from UNR? Seeing yes, I'll call for a motion to clear the remaining items off the consent agenda.
Tom Verducci for the record, so moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I apologize. I apologize for the interruption. Chief Deputy Attorney Mike Detmer for the record. When the chair refers to clearing it from the consent agenda, is that to say to pass them as approved?
Yes.
Chair.
Thank you. Do we have a
Leslie
second?
Biddleston, yeah, Leslie Biddleston will second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimous. We now move on to agenda item number 5, executive report. Laura Rich, Executive Officer, informational and discussion.
All right, thank you, Chair. Laura Rich, Executive Officer of the Public Employees Benefits Program for the record. This is the Executive Officer report. We're just going to go over a few of the items that relate to operations in the agency. The first one is the office move. PEB's lease for 3427 Gonai Road, Suites 108 and 109 was approved at the Board of Examiners meeting back in January. However, in order for us to be able to move, there's a lot of activities that need to take place beforehand. There's several necessary building improvements. So we're adding some walls and things like that and adding doorways. We have to add some building security and things like that. So we do have cubicle installation that is happening next month, and some IT infrastructure as well that need to be implemented before we can move. The goal, and when I wrote this, we were hoping it would be mid-March. It's now looking like more like April, because that is so close to the open enrollment timeframe. I'm thinking that this will probably not happen until potentially June or July. So we are optimistic, but again, we don't want to take on that the big move right during, a time when staff is very, very busy. We're getting a lot of calls, things like that. So this may end up getting postponed until June or July, when it's a little bit easier to, to take on that move. The Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act. So if you remember at the December 2022 PEP board meeting, the board voted to opt out of that act. However, back in December, the end of December, the federal omnibus bill that was signed by President Biden, unexpectedly, we didn't know that this was going to even be included, removed that opt-out option for self-funded government plans. So although PEB planned to do all the required testing and everything really to adhere to the spirit of the law, it is now going to be a formal requirement because we cannot opt out. So we will be starting those efforts here soon. It's a significantly heavy lift. So this likely won't be done until mid to late summer of 2023. A little bit about the executive orders. Several executive orders were issued by Governor Lombardo that are going to have an effect on PEB and will likely require action by the board. So the first one was signed on January 6th, and it rescinds all COVID mandates and requires state leadership to address workforce issues. In this mandate, it also requires state agencies to return to normal in-office operations. We have not received any specific guidance yet on that, but that expectation is that telework is really, it'll either be completely eliminated or at least significantly restricted. So since the pandemic in PEB, telework has been offered, and we've been fairly flexible with staff on the ability to work from home. The exception to this is call center staff. They have been coming into the office, and that is not offered for the call center staff for several reasons. It's been relatively successful at PEB, and staff have perceived the ability to work from home as a benefit, since it does save on transportation costs and it improves that work-life balance. Several staff have already voiced concerns over the elimination of this benefit, so I don't know what the effect is going to be when we do eliminate the benefit. But PEB plans to transition back to full in-person operations, even though that mandate is July 1st. We had planned to transition back once the office relocation was complete. Additionally, on January 12th, the governor signed a second executive order that freezes any new state regulations and directs all state agencies, boards, and commissions to recommend at least 10 regulations for removal due by May 1st. So PEB will be developing and presenting a staff recommended list, and we plan on bringing this to the March board meeting so that the board and the public will be able to weigh in, and we can have a discussion and approval at that March board meeting so that staff can provide that by the May 1st deadline. A little bit about staffing. PEB continues to hover between a 25 to 30% vacancy rate. You've heard me say this before, but the lack of fully staffed and trained member services unit staff is going to be problematic once open enrollment starts. Similar to last open enrollment, we had a very high call volume, and we will likely have a very high call volume during open enrollment, and without the ability to have member services unit staffing, sufficient member services unit staffing, it's going to be challenging. All staff really does during open enrollment, we all answer phones. But again, some staff are specifically trained to be able to answer the plethora of member questions that come into PEB. So they do have to have that level of expertise to be able to address member questions and know how to direct members that call in with their various different scenarios. Staff vacancies will undoubtedly affect PEB's ability to provide adequate customer service moving forward. During open enrollment last year, I know that we had, it wasn't just the call volume, it was emails. We have members that email in, and it was taking, we had hundreds and hundreds of emails that we were not able to keep up with every day. And I know that plenty of staff did it from home. I know I actually personally answered some of those emails as well. Again, with the vacancies, that's going to be challenging. In addition, we have legislative session. We have some RFPs that are out there. They're being developed and will need to be implemented. There's some new projects that are stemming from the compliance audit. Those are going to require a lot of time and attention from not only executive staff, but a lot of other staff at PEB. So these will also be affected as well should the vacancies continue. Future board meetings. The chair has expressed a desire to return to in-person meetings. So moving forward, we're going to try to set up our future meetings to be in person with a hybrid option. So that way it allows the public to participate from home should they want to participate virtually or attend in person. The legislative meetings, though, that we'll have during legislative session, those will continue to be held virtually. The other thing that I wanted to add that's not on this report is that the PEB budget presentation to the legislature is, I believe it's tentatively scheduled, but it may be confirmed for February 17th. So for those of you who are interested in watching that budget presentation to the legislature, I would encourage you to put that on your calendar. So with that, I will stop there for questions.
Ms. Biddleson.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions for Executive Officer Rich. The first question is around the work from home option. Have you experienced any problems with your staff working from home, and do you expect people to opt out or leave state service if they are not offered a work from home option? And my second question is around the vacancy rate. As a state employee myself, and a hiring manager, I am extremely frustrated with success factors, as I'm sure most people are. But even if success factors worked perfectly, we are still experiencing poor candidate quality on our hiring lists. And I think that is due to the pay rate. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that and what your experiences are. So those are my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Sure, Laura Rich for the record. We've actually had a pretty good experience with work from home at PEB. I have not had any sort of issues with staff. I know that at any point, whether it's my executive staff or classified staff, I have fired off emails at any time of the day, and typically I get a response very quickly, which tells me that people are sitting at their laptop and working, whether they're working from home or in the office. Workload, things are getting done, and I would also argue that people are likely working more. I mean, I know that, when I work from home, I'm working from home at 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. or 9 p.m., right? It's, you know, there are staff who, you know, you don't have to get ready and go to the office. And so they're spending that time, you know, catching up on emails or catching up on, you know, on their workload. And so, no, I have not had any issues. You know, I don't know if Mr. Proper, he's the operations officer, wants to chime in here. He supervises most of the staff. Nick, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Nick Proper for the record. I just want to echo Laura's thoughts. I agree that working from home has been productive. We've been doing this for almost 3 years to the month, with staff being available and immediately responsive every single time. And as you've heard, we are consistently understaffed, and many have expressed this is the last remaining perk working for the state. And some are, you know, they're exploring outside employment opportunities to leave the state. And also, staff will be using more leave this year, which is all going to contribute to staff being less available and less productive for our membership.
And that's a good point. I do want, again, I want to add, because of the vacancies, we've actually had to deny leave in the last year. And, you know, we had too much going on and not enough staff. And so there's plenty of staff who accrued so much leave. I think we had 7 or 8 of us who accrued so much leave that we ended up paying out that leave, you know, because we do have the use it or lose it. Now, we're in a scenario where you can't pay out that leave 2 years in a row. So we have no choice but to allow these staff to take their leave. And a lot of them are accruing leave at the highest level. And so, you know, they will be taking time off. And while we can limit it, for example, we limit our use of leave during open enrollment, you know, there's only so much we can do. We don't want to force staff to lose their vacation time. And so we will be put into a situation where staff will be having to take time off in order to not lose it because we can't pay it out. So that's another good point. And I'm sorry, Ms. Biddleson, what was your second question? I can't remember the second one.
Thank you, Executive Officer Rich. My second question was really around candidate quality and really trying to find good candidates for the positions that we have open. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are around our ability to pay good quality candidates. So that was really my question. Thank you.
Laura Bridge, for the record, yes, that's a good point. We are struggling to find qualified candidates and good quality candidates. And you're right, it comes down to pay, because some of these positions are, I mean, for example, I think In-N-Out pays $17 an hour, I think is what they're paying. You've heard me use this example before. The car wash down the street pays about the same as well, and they get tips. Our call center staff are paid about that much. And the level of experience that they're required to come in with, as well as the responsibility that they're tasked with, is much higher than that you would need for a car wash job or an In-N-Out job. We require them to know a lot of information and to give accurate information to employees or to members that call in, because it's important. This is about their healthcare. So you want to make sure that they're being provided not just accurate, but thorough information. And so when the pay for these types of positions is in line with the pay for fast food positions, you know, it's difficult to convince people to come work for the state at that pay. So I know that there's a proposal in the governor's recommended budget for 8% pay raises. Is that going to be sufficient? I don't know.
Thank you. No further questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Alio.
Hi. My question or my thoughts, and I'm sure that PEB, you've done a lot of brainstorming about what to do regarding open enrollment, but I didn't know if there's some other ways some of the calls or emails could be offloaded, possibly if PEB, and I don't even know, this would be across agency, but maybe PEB could give a bit of a training to agency HR staff who could then field some of the questions because the HR staff have a basic understanding already. And so maybe with a training, they might be able to assist and help. And usually people are fairly comfortable and trusting speaking with their agency HR. At least that's what I found. And I know in the past, and you may have nobody left who is interested in doing this, but I know you've been able to do some emergency hires of retired people who might already understand PEB and be able to do that just to help you get through open enrollment. And then my last one was, I am sure some of the questions that come in are really basic because you get basic as well as complex situations. And I don't know if there's some sort of a funnel, and maybe you could even just hire call center staff somewhere or have a quick emergency short contract. And if there was an intake that could funnel the generic questions to that, just trying to throw out some ideas, because even if you were able to hire a bunch of new staff today, if they didn't have any background, they'd only be able to handle that same level of call probably as an agency, because it is kind of concerning and you really have been working with this short staff for so long and people get burnt out. So I'm guessing you guys have sat down and thrown out some ideas, but I just thought I'd do that. That was it. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy. Laura Rich for the record. So a couple things. Agency HR has the same issues we have. They are short-staffed as well. And so they would not be able to come in and answer and really, help PEB out in this situation because they are barely able to keep up with their own workload given the hiring situation that all of the state is having. So, and then the other part of it is that they do not have access to our systems, right? And so when a member calls in, again, it's PHI, it's, you want to make sure that you're providing information to people that, that are eligible to receive that information. You want to make sure that what you're providing is accurate. So without the ability to have access to our systems and all that, then it is difficult. They would need training. We have in the past used our enrollment and eligibility system vendor as an overflow. We stopped doing that years ago because we had problems for a couple of reasons. One, it was very expensive for what we got. And two, it was, you train these folks and they're only answering calls for, 2 months. And so it's similar to with our call center staff, it takes a long time to really understand PEB. PEB is very, very complicated. There's a lot of nuances. There's a lot of if-then type scenarios. And so when you've got a member that calls in and they're speaking to someone that can give them wrong information because really they're just, it's a overflow call center person, they're not always receiving good information. And so that was something we struggled with in the past. And as a result, we don't use that anymore. So yeah, it's something we can do. It's just not a perfect solution. The other the other thing that you mentioned was using retirees. Well, we've thought about that. We did, as you know, we are using one of the previous quality control officer who retired. She's been helping. And we have also thought about reaching out to previous call center people that have retired as well. However, they are working in the private sector, making a whole lot more money. And so that's not, they're not coming back to PEB, unfortunately, because of that. So we have looked into those options, and I wish those were options, but doesn't look like they are.
Okay, Board Member Verducci, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair Rob. I had a comment. I'm reading in this report, the first executive order signed on January 6th rescinds all COVID mandates. And I recall when COVID started, sitting on this board, we had to reduce 36 million for 2 fiscal years. And that did include a mandate outside of the board decision to eliminate the long-term disability and increase out-of-pocket costs and reductions with HSA contributions, and excluded certain family members. And it doesn't seem like we're really rescinding all COVID mandates. It seems like some of them are selectively being restored, and that's good, but it doesn't seem like we've rescinded all mandates according to the executive order signed by the governor. And I just wanted to throw that in for the record. I also wanted to throw out that the different subject we're talking about. I think working from home is good, as long as it's not causing any problems, and it seems to be working. I work a lot from home, and I would agree with Executive Officer Rich that it's very effective. You get up and you start doing your work right away, and you don't get stuck with the commute, and dry cleaning, and gas. And one last idea was with the vacancies. When I had to fill vacancies in some of my prior roles, we would go to a temp agency oftentimes and bring somebody in. If it was a qualified person, we would try to work with that individual then to get them hired on. So just a few ideas I just wanted to throw out there.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, do you have a question? Oh, you do.
Yes, thank you, Chair Rob. Executive Officer Rich, I just wanted to second Member Ayala's suggestion about using agency personnel. I heard everything you said in response to her, but I do think you're underestimating the skill level of many of the HR representatives out in the agencies. If a person's job is already dedicated to orientation and benefits and things, then they have a very good understanding of the PEB program. I understand they cannot get into the back end and see what people are enrolled in, but as far as answering general questions, that is their job. And so many times, I know at NSHE we have highly skilled benefit staff, and those staff would welcome the opportunity for a train the trainer with PEBP, because I heard anecdotally last open enrollment that they often, when they had questions, would sit on hold for hours as well. And so if you provide that information to one benefit specialist at NSHE, they're serving thousands of NSHE employees, which then don't have to clog up your phone lines. So I know it takes time to develop train the trainer programs, and I hear that you're short-staffed, but I do think that spending the time now to ask agencies whether they have these staff out there who are willing to do an in-depth with PEBP will lighten your load. And then the additional thing is coming back to that hours on hold. As I say, I did hear that agency personnel were just kind of dumped into the whole queue and would sit for hours waiting for a response when they would be able to answer those questions for many people. And so I would urge you to think about a special phone number or email address for agency personnel who are serving more than just themselves. because if you can educate and provide the information to those folks, then they can educate their employees, and that's what they do. That's what their job is. And so I just, I think we're all a little scarred, and I know you and your staff are, about the last open enrollment. Certainly it was a condensed period, it was a changed open enrollment, but the few questions I've had this year outside of open enrollment, I've ended up in a queue still for a long time, longer than I think is suitable, and it's not even open enrollment. So I think that, honestly, I think that there's pain points. I think that no solution is going to be perfect, but I think that one of the very first things I would urge you to think about is using the staff that's out there that are still employed. We do still have some employees, and they're eager to do their job, but they need your help. And so how can we facilitate that? And thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Laura Rich, for the record, we have been working actually with the NSHE HR team, and we've started some of these conversations. So I think that is likely something that we can work with them on. Again, there's certain limitations, but I think that we can still use them for certain types of roles. And I think, Mr. Proper, you have your hand up, so I think he might want to add something to that.
Thanks, Nick Proper, for the record. I just want to clarify a couple comments from Ms. Kelly. We do have a designated agency representative email address and a designated agency representative URL with training guides, FAQs, and all the information needed. And we regularly send out updated communications to ARs and have regular conversations and meetings with ARs as well. So all of that does exist and will continue.
Thank you. Any further questions on agenda item number 5? Seeing none, we'll close agenda item number 5 and move on to agenda item number 6, presentation on PEB portion of the governor's recommended budget. Laura Rich, Executive Director, Informational and Discussion.
All right. Laura Rich, for the record. So this report is on the governor's recommended budget for the 24-25 biennium, specific to PEB, the PEB part of the budget. At the May 26, 2022 board meeting, the board did direct staff to submit 2 versions of an agency request budget for the 24 and 25 biennium. The first budget follows the guidance that was received by the governor's office, and that budget maintains the FY22 benefit design. It also does include a few enhancements, and it includes enhancements for an in-house counsel and upgrading of 2 IT positions that are currently existing within the agency. The second budget is based on the slightly richer FY20 plan design, which includes the restoration of long-term disability and life insurance. That budget also includes that in-house counsel and IT position upgrades as well. So we worked pretty closely with our actuaries, Siegel, and submitted those budgets on September 1st of 2022. As we all know, the governor's recommended budget remains confidential until it is released by the governor. So PEB was not able to present any of this information ahead of time, which is why this particular report was not posted until Monday night after the governor's State of the State address. So PEB's total biennial budget has increased from the FY 22-23 biennium by $100 million to $1.1 billion. In this budget, the benefit levels from FY 22 are continued, and the restored benefits, those are those benefits that the PEB board voted on to use our excess and spend down to restore some of those, the deductibles and out-of-pocket maxes and copays and things like that. So we restored all that. That is now part of the base budget, and it has now been incorporated into the base benefit design. So it's no longer something that we have to worry about in terms of, can we fund that moving forward? It is now part of the base benefit design. So as you can see on these tables here, you can see the agency request versus what the governor's recommended budget what's included in the governor's recommended budget. You see that there's a variance, right? So it's a little different. The main variance between the agency request budget versus the governor's recommended budget stems from the difference in trend percentage. So what is trend? That's our experience and utilization. That is what we believe is the cost of healthcare is going to be for the program moving forward in the next 2 years. So the plan benefit design remains consistent, but the lower trend assumes lower inflation, right? So the cost of the future cost of healthcare is lower. And so that does lower the overall budget amount. Historically, GFO, Governor's Finance Office, has not used the actuarial assumptions that have been provided by PEB. So this is not something that, I mean, we expected this, right? It's not out of the ordinary. And because they use Moody's economy to apply our trend, not just ours, but corrections and Medicaid as well. This has been used since 2012. So again, like I said, it's not something that was unexpected, but it is inherently, it's an inherent risk because as you can see on page 3, the agency request was 5, 8, and 2. So 5% for medical, 8% for RX, and 2% for dental. What we got was 3.91, 3.67, and 2, which is obviously much lower than what was asked for. And so we're hoping that the cost of healthcare turns out to be closer to 3.91 than it is to 5%. The cost of drugs are closer to a 3.67 increase versus that 8% increase. This has been done in the past. This is not new. So in the past, PEB has made up for that lower budget amount for trend through cost saving measures such as contract renewals and program implementations that lower the cost of healthcare. Although we don't have a whole lot of contracting opportunities left, the program has, we went through a lot of RFPs and we don't have a lot of renewals for those contracts coming up in the next biennium. So there's not a whole lot of opportunity to squeeze out more savings through contract changes. But there are some opportunities to implement several kind of benefits that will reduce the cost. So for example, Hinge Health, which was approved, that will save the program, projected to save the program several $1 million in each of the years of the biennium. So will Cancer Concierge, so will some of these other programs, right? So we think that that should mitigate the risk of that lower trend. Additionally, we've got some enrollment projections here. Keep in mind that this is budgeted enrollment, not actual enrollment. We had obviously enrollment changed a little bit because of the vacancy rates, but these are budgeted enrollment rates. And so the chart there just shows, very minimal changes to enrollment moving forward in the next 2 years. The employer subsidy. So I want to talk a little bit about the employer subsidy because we made some changes to this. The employer subsidy is made up of what we call AGIS and REGI. AGIS is the active employee group insurance, and REGI is the retired employee group insurance. So those are the contributions that are paid by the employer, so by the state, on behalf of employees and retirees. The table that you see on page 4 shows the subsidy levels throughout the years. Now, why this changed? This is something that we changed in our budget. So we had a RGGI problem. So the RGGI subsidies, they're assessed through a percentage of payroll paid by agencies monthly. Over the past several years, PEB has had an increasing shortfall in this RGGI budget account. And so we've had to, and that shortfall continues to grow. There's no way to move money around because of the statutes to cover, one account to cover the other. You can't move that money around. And so those costs in that RGGI, the shortfall in the RGGI just continue to rise and rise and rise. We had to figure out a solution for that because we weren't bringing in enough money in the retiree account. A very simplified explanation of this is in statute, we are required, the program is required to rate employees, actives and retirees together in one risk pool. And so for the sake of argument, let's just say they cost $10. But what we know is that if you were to take those two apart, retirees don't cost $5 and actives cost $5, right? Retirees cost a lot more than $5 and actives cost less than $5, right? It's not an equal math equation there. And so, but because of the way that the operational costs and the way that we do the accounting in the state, 5 was going to retirees and 5 was going to actives. This doesn't work, the math doesn't work. And this is why over the years we've had this RGGI shortfall. So we had to go back and fix that problem. And so we worked with GFO, with the legislature and our actuaries and figured out a solution to this. And really what we did is overall, we're still bringing in the same amount of money, but we changed the math equation so that now we're bringing in more for RGGI, for retirees, and less for actives. And so you're going to see in that 24 and 25 subsidy levels that AGIS goes down and RGGI goes up. And again, it's the same amount of money. It's just the percentage of where we're getting it from. Budget enhancements, and I apologize. I don't know why this table on page 5 made it. I think it was just a formatting error or something. That utilization trend table should not be on page 5. So please just ignore that. So that on the budget enhancements, we did have a few enhancements that were included in the governor's recommended budget. They were the board member travel, which is, it just allows 2 board members to attend the SALGBA conference, which is typically in, there's a few SALGBA conferences, but the main one happens typically around April, May timeframe. I know we've had some board members attend that. We had some office relocation expenses, obviously the lease and things like that change included in that. The equipment replacement, which is fairly common in any budget. And then the in-house counsel. So remember, we had a chief information officer position that we have not filled for quite some time, and we turned this into an in-house counsel position. So that was an enhancement that was included in the budget. I'm very excited about that one. I know we've needed an in-house counsel. There's a lot of legal things that come up at PEB, and we could really use someone who lives and breathes PEB to be able to weigh in on legal matters. So I'm very excited about that one. As I mentioned, the upgrades to our current IT professional 2 and 3 positions were not approved. We had asked for those to be changed to a 3 and a 4. And those were not included in the enhancements in the governor's recommended budget. So to conclude, PEB does appreciate the assistance of GFO and the governor's office working with PEB to keep this plan design consistent while also mitigating rate increases to employees in the governor's recommended budget. So I'll stop there for questions.
Any questions on agenda item number 6? Ms. Biddleson?
Thank you, Chair. Leslie Biddleston for the record. Executive Officer Rich, I have 3 questions. The first question is around the trend, the projected trend from the actuaries versus the projected trend from the governor's finance office is quite different. So my first question is, what recourse does the board have if the trend turns out to be higher than what the governor budgeted? So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is around is on page 5, E815 in-house counsel. Whereas I think it's wonderful that PEB has an in-house counsel, but I'm concerned about that chief information officer position that has not been filled. It seems like, you know, with PEB being short-staffed, call center being short-staffed, it seems like that position would be a vital position. So how will PEB be without a chief information officer? My last question is also around the enhancements of the IT professionals. You stated that you asked for upgrades. Will the upgrades that were not approved, how will that affect PEB? Those are my 3 questions. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Laura Rich for the record. Good question. So the first one was on trend. What kind of recourse? So the problem with the trend is really comes up in year 2. Because in year 2 is when we don't have the legislature, there's no way to increase our revenue, right? The only way to increase revenue is to increase it by increasing employee premiums. We don't have the ability to increase the employer subsidy in year 2 because the legislature has to do that, and that is not a legislative year. So should we find ourselves in a situation to where we're seeing trend closer to that 5 and 8%, we may actually, we would, if we want to avoid increasing premiums in that second year, we would have to then use our reserves, catastrophic reserves, if we don't have access. So when we use catastrophic reserves, we have to backfill that bucket, right? So you can't just use them and then not backfill them. So it would put ourselves in a situation where we could use those reserves and then in our budget ask the legislature to then make us whole. It's not ideal because then it does put PEB in a situation to where if that is not appropriated, then what do we do? And then it also puts PEB in a situation to where we have, we're asking the governor and the legislature in the next budget for money, and it could potentially not be funded, right? So it's not an ideal scenario. Again, we've avoided that. We've been able to in the past. This is not new. This is something GFO has done historically. So this is not something that has happened in the past. Again, inflation hasn't been as crazy in the past as as we've seen. So it is an inherent risk, but like I said, we do have a lot of programs that we're implementing that should lower those costs. Additionally, we're not seeing, up until this point, we haven't seen in this plan year the utilization that was expected. So there's potentially some excess that, and I don't want to speak too soon, so please don't hold me to this because we are only 6 months into the plan year. But there's potentially an opportunity to, to use that excess to mitigate that as well.
Okay, thank you.
I forgot there's 2 more questions. Write them down. So the in-house counsel, the CIO position, I'm not concerned about, because what we did a few years ago is we transitioned, back in the day, PEB was not using state IT. We did not use EATS, and we did everything in-house. And so that CIO position really handled the majority of the IT needs in the agency, and there were a lot. But we slowly transitioned to relying on the state IT resources and leverage that. And so we've moved stuff over to EATS to handle. And so a lot of the role that the CIO played has been removed and has now shifted over to state IT. There is a concern with the upgrades not being approved for the 2 remaining IT staff. The concerns are, you do want the level of expertise, and currently we do have, I believe, that level of expertise in-house within the 2 positions that are filled. Should one of them leave, I don't know if we will, right? And so there's also situations where we might want some higher level skills, which is why we asked for the positions to be upgraded to from a 2 and a 3 to a 3 and a 4. And those skills, while we have them today, they're the new person that may take over when either of these IT staff move on may not have them. And so because it is a lower level position, so it is somewhat concerning. But yes, for the most part, a lot of our IT needs are at least supplemented through EATS.
Thank you, Chair. No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Betsy, do you have any questions?
Just a quick one, Executive Officer Rich. I probably heard this wrong because based on public comment and everything, but I thought I heard you say that long-term disability was added back into the base budget. Did I hear that incorrect?
Laura Rich, for the record, it was included as a request in that second budget, but it was not included in the governor's recommended budget. So no, it is not being funded.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none right now. We've been at it for an hour and 18 minutes. Why don't we take a quick break and come back at 10:30?
Chair, would you like to approve this one, I guess, or actually
Yes,
it's not,
please.
it's an information only, so I guess there's no, sorry.
Information, I didn't think it needed any approval. Thank
We're
you.
good. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, it's 10:30. Can we get everybody back? We're going to call the meeting back to order. We're moving on to agenda item number 7, discussion of possible action on recommended changes to master plan documents for plan year 24, July 1, 23 through June 30, 24. Laura Rich, Executive Officer for possible action. 7.1, consumer-driven health plan. Ms. Rich?
Yes, so Laura Rich for the record. In the interest of time, actually, I'm going to go over the kind of a brief summary rather than every single change that was made. So let me just first start out with a little bit of the background. NRS 287-0425 requires PEB to undergo a compliance review once every 2 years. This compliance review historically has been really focused on the legal aspects of the plan and the compliance to federal and state laws. But to date, to my knowledge, PEB has never performed an in-depth clinical level review to ensure that the program is not only in legal compliance, but also that the program and the plan and all of our plan rules align with industry standards and that antiquated policies are getting updated. So, you know, I mean, a good example of this is at one of our previous board meetings, we talked about dental changes and silver fillings versus the white composite fillings. You know, silver fillings is no longer something that is the standard, right? People are getting white fillings versus those silver fillings, and I'm using the layperson's terms. I know there's you know, specific dental terms for them, but our plan would reimburse at the silver rate versus at the white composite rate. And we've done that for years and years. And so it wasn't industry standard. It's things like that we really need to keep up on. And so I will say first, I want to thank staff. I want to thank all of our partners and vendors that participated in this, because we put a lot of time and effort into it. It was a lot of hours that were dedicated to this. We really combed through these plan documents and uncovered a lot of things that needed changing. And so while this was something that was very time intensive at a time where we don't have a lot of time to, you know, to give up, I think that this was one of the better activities that took place in the program. And I think this is something that PEB should do moving forward, at least every 2 years, I think. So the beginning part of the report just talks about the housekeeping changes. Those are things like date changes, you know, changing it from plan year 22 to plan year 23 to, you know, those types of changes, or sorry, 23 to 24, and updating vendor information. Those are just all the housekeeping changes, and we do that every year. So I'm not going to go over those. Starting on page, I don't know what page, but on the utilization management, I believe that's page 3. Minor changes were made to utilization management, and this is where certain items were removed or added to pre-certification requirements. Again, this is, we worked with the utilization management provider and some of our clinicians or some of their clinicians, and they provided their expertise. You know, these things should be added to pre-certification requirements. These things don't make sense to have as pre-certification requirements. So we made some changes there. Moving on to, let's see, page 5. I wanted to go over just certain high level items. I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but the board obviously, after I've done going through the report, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer, you know, any of them specific to any of these changes or additions or exclusions. But I pointed out, I'm going to point out just some of the more important ones that I think should be highlighted. If you look on page 5, number 18, the over-the-counter hearing aids. So we did add an exclusion which excludes the over-the-counter hearing aids versus prescription hearing aids. And the reason we're doing this is because there's different requirements and different kinds of hearing aids, right? And so the over-the-counter hearing aids are not approved for those with advanced hearing loss, right? So we want to cover those who really do need those hearing aids. And they don't include the over-the-counter hearing aids, don't include the advanced hearing technology or anything like that. And members tend to get a little, they get confused, right? And so we want them to we want to steer them to the hearing aids that they need. And those that really actually need hearing aids are going to need to purchase those advanced level hearing aids that we do offer a discount programs through Amplifon to purchase those as well. So staff recommends excluding those over-the-counter hearing aids. On page 6, if you look at item number 22, we are recommending a reduction in a benefit. This is the removal of the IUI benefit, and this is related to infertility services. So IUI clinically leads to multiple births, and many local OBGYNs perform IUI without having a member evaluated by a reproductive endocrinologist. There could be underlying medical conditions that go unaddressed with this pathway, and it's typically not covered by health plans due to its high risk and low success rate. So we are recommending the removal of that. Now, something that we can look at moving forward is adding other fertility coverage in the future. But this one is just not something that is typically covered by health plans anyway, and is just high risk and low success. Then I want to point out that on number 23, we did reduce the travel expenses, the reimbursement that is associated with the travel programs that we offer for things like bariatric surgery and things like that. We had to do this because it is an IRS rule. So that was something that was uncovered. We were actually reimbursing at higher amounts than we should have been for those for the meals. Meals are not a tax exempt benefit. Moving on to page 7. I wanted to touch on item number 25, which is an enhancement. We are recommending removing the plan language relating to gender dysphoria related services. This is where all procedures, services, and supplies relating to surgery and hormones associated with gender affirmation or confirmation are right now required to be reviewed by for medical necessity. What we're doing is removing some of that plain language and instead just allowing plan or the utilization company to apply industry standards. You've heard through public comment that there's WPATH standards. The new version came out, version 8 came out recently, and allowing this just allows the plan to be a little bit more flexible and keep up with that, especially in this area. That landscape changes very quickly. And so by pushing this onto the utilization management, they're able to be more flexible and apply the latest and greatest industry standards to all of those gender dysphoria related services. Number 27 is also an enhancement. We are recommending the change in the time frame that we will cover for hospice services. We are asking for potentially, just changing that 6-month time frame and removing that, because that 6-month time frame is arbitrary and can become problematic. Hospice is, it's an end of life situation. It's hard to say, after 6 months, you have not passed away, we're not going to cover you, right? That's not, it turns out to be problematic. And so it's a very arbitrary time frame. And so we believe, again, that this should be driven by utilization management. This is something that, should be discussed and determined by clinicians. Moving on to page 8. I wanted to highlight the number 33, which is a reduction. Meal replacement therapy was removed from the obesity care management program. And this is, again, it's to comply with IRS regulations. This is not something that is a qualified medical expense. And so the plan cannot cover it at that rate that we've been covering it at. On page 9, number 39, I wanted to, again, look at the continued coverage. So for pregnancy, today, it is 45 days of continued coverage. If, for example, if we change networks, if a provider is no longer in network, right, and there's a pregnancy that is being addressed, and that person doesn't want to change their provider, mid-pregnancy. Currently, right now, it is 45 days, and we are increasing that to 90 days, and that is also required per the No Surprises Act. On page 10, there's an enhancement there. We're adding insulin pump supplies. This is, again, this was a recommendation by our pharmacy benefit manager. This just increases access to care for insulin and supplies and aligns with the industry standard coverage. I know that there's a lot of technology in insulin is changing, where now there's it's difficult to differentiate between, the pump and the supplies. And so it's just easier just to cover, to have that broad coverage for the diabetes plans. Let's see, moving on to, if we look at the benefit limitations and exclusions, a lot of these, it's, again, clarification, or we have made those changes due to just aligning with the ACA or with IRS regulations, or something along those lines, where it's regulations and requirements that the plan must meet. And so most of these are just either aligning with that or providing some additional clarification to the language. And I think, let me see, I think that was it that I was going to go over specifically. Nope, I've got one more, I think. On page 21, on number 147, I wanted to point this out as well, vision screening. So currently we have a $25 copay for a vision exam. As you heard, I think it was last board meeting, where we talked about the dental not being an accepted benefit because it's part of the plan and it's part of the overall, it's combined, and the overall benefits, we're not treating vision differently than than medical. It's part of the overall package. And because of this, it's not an accepted benefit per the ACA. And per IRS regulations, it is on the high deductible health plan, on the CDHP, we cannot have a copay. So we're having to change that to make it subject to deductible and co-insurance. Let me just make sure. I think that was it. Those were the ones, I think the big ones that I wanted to cover. But if there's any other questions, we do have all of our subject matter experts here that are available to answer questions. Mr. Lindley, our quality control officer, did a lot of work on this. And so I'm happy to answer questions, or we can also, include our subject matter experts on this.
Mr. Verducci.
Thank you, Chair Rob. Tom Verducci for the record. This is for Executive Officer Rich. Could you talk a little bit about the No Surprises Act? That's just new terminology and it sounds very interesting, and just want to see if I could learn a little bit more what the New Surprises Act is. No Surprises Act.
Laura Rich, for the record, I can speak about it, but I think that Mr. Lindley is going to do a much better job because he's been knee deep in No Surprises Act for the last few months.
Tim Lindley for the record, the Quality Control Officer for Public Employee Benefits Program. The No Surprises Act was a recent law passed by the government, signed by the president, that impacts health plans nationwide. Being a general statement, I would like to defer to our actuary, maybe Amy Dunn or Richard Ward, who can possibly give a better explanation. It's one of those acts that has an all-encompassing impact on healthcare nationwide. But I want to turn my time over to our Siegel actuaries for a much more in-depth explanation on that.
Thank you, Tim. Richard Ward with Siegel for the record. Amy Dunn, my colleague, is a health compliance expert and attorney. So I will likewise defer to her as the legal expert.
Good morning. My name is Amy Dunn with Siegel for the record. Thank you very much for your question. Yes, the No Surprises Act was passed a couple of years ago. It is a federal law that, in a nutshell, pertains to things, for example, that we may have heard the term balance billing when it comes to certain types of services. If someone goes out of network for certain things and ultimately receives a large bill later on down the line. There are now rules that are on a federal level that are pertaining to that if you are receiving, for example, emergency services. It was also very specific to services including air ambulance type of services. It also includes certain types of notice requirements, which also have been included on the PEB website regarding this. And it also pertains to, for example, one of the things we were just talking about for continuity of care. One of those issues regarding pregnancy, if there is a provider that goes, for example, terminates a contract, that there are actually rules now regarding how long someone can continue service under that provider for those reasons on certain serious medical conditions. So it was, again, a federal law that came into play just a couple of years ago. There was also part of that involving things including what's also known as transparency. There are going to be certain things that are coming down in the next few years regarding price comparison tools. But at a high level, that is what that is intended ultimately to do.
And Tim Lindley for the record. A direct impact that everyone can see here today. If you look at your health insurance card, on the back of the card, you will see your deductibles and or copays and out-of-pocket maximum. So it did have a direct impact on all of our members for the health insurance cards. And in a nutshell, the No Surprises Act is intended to cover any potential surprises a member may receive when receiving healthcare. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the clarification. I know when I get an EOB, I always have a surprise on something that I'm charged. So that's very good to see going through. I did have another issue I wanted to bring up here on item 25. We did hear from public testimony that looks like they were requesting that we might be able to add some language to include other industry standards that could make it a little more flexible, but I don't know if that opens it up too much for speculation, if it needs to be more concise, but I was just suggesting that we add the wording and other industry standards, just in case in the future, we're not locked into just one level of guidelines. I don't know if that's possible or not, to just add that simple language there.
Tim Lindley for the record. In addressing the gender dysphoria related services, the prior plan documents did list specific mandatory requirements and prior requirements. The updated language removes all those prior requirements and does put the onus on the utilization management company. Utilization management companies do factor in several different standards and recommendations that are frequently updated. However, I do not want to speak for the company, and we do have the utilization management people present. If they are able to speak on that, we may UMR and or show. Are you there?
Any further questions? Board Member Kelly.
Thank you, Chair Rob. So I have 3 questions, I guess. Firstly, the over-the-counter hearing aids. It's my understanding that that law was passed because, you know, hearing aids are a very expensive piece of equipment. And so to try and drive prices down, over-the-counter were introduced. Now, the last time, you know, over-the-counter drugs, you know, there was a huge move toward over-the-counter drugs. Doctors actually started referring people to those drugs that weren't covered. And so I guess my concern is that with over-the-counter hearing aids, if a person goes to a hearing doctor, they, you know, like the over-the-counter equipment is cheaper, so they refer them to that. Is there a way people can get that covered if they have a legitimate hearing concern? So I'm quite concerned about removing the ability for people to hear from our plan, especially when, you know, the prescription hearing aids are so much more expensive. Some retirees, some employees may not have their share of the cost for hearing aids versus over the counter. So that's my first question. I'd like to understand that change a bit more. I'm wondering regarding the IUI fertility procedures, how many of those have been done in the last 5 years per plan? I'm just kind of interested in understanding the usage of that particular benefit that will be removed. And then lastly, a big question. I wonder, like, I know that all of these changes are suggested with the best of intentions, so don't get me wrong here, but there's a lot, and there's always negative consequences of changes. That's just life, right? We can't anticipate the impact of all of these changes on all of our participants. But I do wonder, has there been a full analysis done of the impact of the changes as far as costs go for both participants and for the plan? So what kind of work has actually been done to cost in these changes? Because there were a lot of enhancements, but there are also some takeaways that really could impact our participants. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Laura Rich, for the record, I think we should take these one by one. First of all, it's a hearing aid question, and I think I'm going to need to lean on some of our experts on that. I don't know if maybe someone from the UMR team or Siegel team wants to speak on that. Rhonda, you might have some input on this one.
Rhonda, do *6 to unmute your mic, please, or your phone.
Tim, I know you worked on this with them. Do you want to chime in?
Tim, Ron, I do see Rhonda is speaking. Rhonda, did you want to go ahead and make your comments?
Yeah, so this is Rhonda Huckabee for the record with UMR. And on the FDA ruling that was released recently by President Biden, there are some comments in there about over-the-counter hearing aids available at Walgreens, CVS, Walmart. With that, some of these are still, $799 and different prices. Some as much as they would pay if they went to their normal audiologist and bought the hearing aids through them. And with, as Laura Rich had commented on, currently they have the Amplifon discount program that helps them, that reduces the price of the cost of the hearing aids that they are purchasing. And then we apply the benefits, which is $1,500 per ear. So they do have like a $3,000 maximum if they have to have hearing aids for both ears.
Michelle Kelly, for the record, I'm not sure that answers my question. I'm pretty sure it doesn't answer my question, actually.
And I'm sorry, Michelle Kelly, but what was the additional question?
Well, I'm just wondering, so the chances are that some of these audiologists might start referring people to over-the-counter hearing aids. And so I'm just wondering, why, if a person has a legitimate hearing loss, why would we require that, I guess, they go through, that they go through and purchase more expensive hearing aids if an over-the-counter one would actually suffice?
Well, and then Rhonda Huckabee, for the record, the PEB plan does have very specific hearing aid criteria regarding the loss, and that is determined by the provider and or Amplifon. The over-the-counter ruling lets them buy a hearing aid without a medical exam, a prescription, or a professional fitting. So in those cases, when they submit the claim, if it does not meet the criteria, outlined in PEB's plan document, then we could have situations where, did you really meet 50% hearing loss because you didn't have a medical exam to support the criteria outlined in the plan document? And then I will also defer to Siegel for Amy and them, because I'm not sure how much additional research they did on the FDA ruling.
Richard Ward with Siegel for the record. I'm sorry, did I talk over somebody? I may have a lag in my connection. No, I think an appropriate analogy might be with reading glasses, drugstore available reading glasses. The price point is not comparable, but just from the perspective of, if you need specific corrective lenses, then you have to have a prescription from your eye doctor to get those filled. But if you feel like you would benefit from some additional magnification, and that reading glasses that are available at the drugstore, I'll just continue to use that analogy. I know that's not exactly that you as the consumer, as the member, can go choose yourself and make the determination yourself without the need for a prescription. This change with hearing aids and equipment is similar, in that there's now over-the-counter availability for the member to determine his or herself if that would be beneficial, versus those that are more tailored after an exam and based on a prescription. And so the plan coverage is being amended to align similarly with hearing aids. So it'll cover when there's a medical professional determination that there's sufficient hearing loss to merit a custom prescription hearing aid. But for hearing aids that the member can elect on his or her own volition to cover or to buy, this will, similarly to to glasses, reading glasses, the plan will not cover it. However, I believe it would be a reimbursable expense through an HRA or an HSA.
Okay, thank you. So I guess, you use reading glasses as an analogy. I think I prefer allergy medicines, because allergy medicines were once all prescription. And then, of course, they were opened up to over-the-counter. And doctors started referring people to the over-the-counter, and then they weren't covered by the health insurance. So I wonder, is there a way we can make some changes to the plan document to limit the ability, but if a person still has a hearing loss that meets the standards and can get a prescription for an over-the-counter hearing aid that might be cheaper than the custom model so they can afford it, is there a way that we can get the plan to cover those? So I'm not saying it should be a free-for-all, but I do I just do have some concerns about just blocking all over-the-counter hearing aids when there could be a legitimate need for it.
Okay, thank you. And you had multiple other questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair Rob. I'm wondering how many IUI procedures have been covered in the last 5 years? I think that's a data question. And then I think this is more a question for Executive Officer Rich, but has there been a full analysis done of the impact of these changes from a cost perspective on both participants, so utilization, and the plan?
Laura Rich, for the record, we'd have to pull that utilization data, so we can definitely provide that. I don't have it off the top of my head. I don't know if anyone on the Siegel team had pulled that data. I don't think so. But please feel free to chime in if that data is available. It looks like someone, Joanna.
Yeah, hi, Joanna Baylog Reynolds with Siegel, for the record. So the analysts have pulled it and they're combing through the data. So it's not really easy to just go in and say, click a button for IUI. There's a lot of different procedure codes, and there may be diagnostic testing that led somebody to considering IUI, and then maybe they didn't go through with it, or they did a procedure and it didn't work. So we kind of have to comb through that and make sure that we pulled the right codes and that we're getting you the actual data that will tell you that story. So we have pulled it and we are looking through that right now.
Thank you. I just as a general comment, Executive Officer Rich, I'm kind of concerned that, if a person's using some of these services, removing them from the plan is a significant change for them. And so I guess I would have hoped that there would have been analysis done on usage before we just make the determination to remove these services from the plan. If they haven't been used, then that's a great justification. But if they are being used, then we also all need to consider education and communication to people who are using the services, because I assume all of these changes go into effect July 1st. So I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the information we've been given on the removal stuff as far as the impact to plan and participants.
Okay.
Laura Rich, for the record, we'll provide that information either to you directly, Member Kelly, or to the board at a following board meeting. We would definitely be sending out materials or communications to members who, have received that type of coverage, either or receiving it or in the past, just as a informational piece of material to those people. Your third question was about the cost, the overall cost. Most of the biggest changes are as a result of requirements, right? So requirements that we must meet due to either IRS regulations, the No Surprises Act, the Mental Health Parity. There's all kinds of requirements there that we've found. Some of them, most of these are fairly, I wouldn't say that they don't impact the plan, but they're not major impacts. So for example, the copay to the vision exam. So right now that vision exam is $25 copay. Moving forward, those on the CDHP will have to meet their deductible in order to get anything paid towards that vision exam. Those exams are, $100 or so, approximately. And so that could be an impact to members who haven't received, or will be an impact to members who haven't met their deductible. Those who are in the copay area where they're, it's the 80-20 copay, they're paying 20%. They're paying, if it's $100, they're going to be paying $20, right? So it's not an impact there. It just depends. But most of these changes are definitely to meet those requirements and areas where we don't have the choice to make the change. Now there are some, for example, the one that we were just talking about, the UIU, the IUI, that is an area where obviously it's a, depending on utilization, how much would it save the plan? Again, it's such a small area that it's probably not going to be significantly impactful. The hearing aids, things like that. So all of these they will impact the plan, but not to the degree to where we are very concerned about it. I wouldn't say that a number has been put on these changes. But like I said, most of them are required. They're required by law, and we don't have a choice to make them.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Betsy, do you have a question?
Just a quick question for PEB and maybe the actuaries, I'm not sure. But in regards to IUI, what Michelle Kelly was saying, it looks like in some of the justification you folks typed up, it was because people hadn't been evaluated by a reproductive oncologist or evaluated for underlying medical conditions. Could that be a process where that's required? Because if people are sick or there's other issues, we'd want them to get that anyway. So I'm just wondering if, and I'm just throwing it out here, and I'm fine with how you guys end up on it, but I had the same concern Michelle did, was how many people think, oh, our plan has this and I'm planning to use it and I've got it. And if part of our concern is the outcomes and the problems with it, if having those services decrease the risk and the outcomes, then would that be able to be moved into a process? Just ideas throwing out, but I'm fine with however the management ends up.
That may be a question, maybe Joanna, is that something that can be done through utilization management? Is that?
Yeah, so the recommendation to move away from an IUI benefit to a managed fertility approach. And so that would be something that, we would work with the board and team to say, is that something that we go through UMR? Is there a different company that you want to evaluate to do that? But that is really the recommendation, to move to something like that versus just having an IUI benefit. And the other thing about your benefit too, the product to be donated for IUI, you require both individuals to actually be covered on your plan. So it's probably a narrower group of individuals that are actually accessing the benefit. And oftentimes what happens with IUI, if you're just going to an OBGYN, they can get pregnant, but maybe they can't sustain the pregnancy all the way through. And no one's evaluating why that is. And so that's really why we would like to shift individuals to more of a reproductive endocrinologist to have the right workup and testing, so that maybe they don't even need IUI. Maybe there's something else going on medically they need to treat, and then they can get pregnant naturally. Or you eliminate the need to go through 6 treatments of IUI, which is invasive for a woman. And then you can move them right away to IVF or some other procedure that is more appropriate. And so that's really the recommendation. We want to evolve that benefit.
So then maybe maybe even Michelle, you're not technically removing the fertility benefit. You're amending how it's being applied. And by listing it as a reduction versus a process change, I'm thinking that what I'm hearing from you is that families can still go through this fertility process then and have the right outcome applied, or no, if the IUI was determined to be the right outcome after the process, they wouldn't be able to get it. I'm not sure.
So if we move to a managed fertility benefit, IUI could potentially be the right thing for that individual. Just less people. It's more appropriate to get tested to make sure that's the right approach. And then, like I said, with IUI, you get more multiple births, so we see more complications. So actually, the evidence-based medicine has shifted away from using that as often.
So that we still have that benefit. It's just through a fertility process.
No, so the recommendation here is to remove that benefit because of everything that Joanna has just has explained. However, if we were to move it to a managed fertility care type situation, a benefit, that's a different scenario. And then that's where now we've got to really go into what is the cost involved? What is that? Because now it's not just the IUI, now it's, in vitro and other services as well that we currently don't cover. So if we're going to go down that road, it's probably going to be much more of a analysis and process to bring to the board at a later date. It's something we can do, but it will come at a cost. And so I want to make sure that we're not increasing benefits that come with costs at a time when our budgets at the legislature.
So it's not a current benefit we have then. So it is a removal of this.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further questions? Seeing none.
I'm sorry, this is Jennifer McClendon for the record, and I just want to say that I have many conversations about the healthcare plan with the folks that I work with at NSHE. And often the conversation will go something like, our healthcare isn't what it used to be, but we have really good fertility benefits. And so I just wanted to just point that out, that this is a potential, I don't know, the optics of this aren't great. And I know that maybe NSHE people are a small fraction of the folks who are covered by PEB, and there are bigger issues here. But for particularly women in higher ed who put off families for a really long time, sometimes those of us who have done that, we look at the infertility benefits of the places that might be hiring us. So it could have a small impact on hiring as well. That being said, I think we do need to follow regulations and make sure that people are getting the care that they need. But if we make this change, I would really strongly advocate for looking into how we can develop some sort of a fertility management program for our employees. Thanks.
I see a hand up. Board Member April.
Yes, April Karn for the record. I know that previously when Michelle Kelly was talking, it was mentioned that maybe we would get the statistics over to her, but as a board member, I would like to see those statistics as well. So if we could maybe bring that to the board the next time we meet, I think that would be beneficial to everyone.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, item 7 is listed for possible action. Do you need any action, Ms. Rich, on this? Okay, I'll call for a motion.
Michelle Kelly here. I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we approve staff's recommendations on the changes to the master plan documents. All except for item 22, which I would like to have held over to another meeting until we can fully evaluate current usage of that benefit and perhaps a better way to move forward.
This is Betsy. I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimous. We'll move on to agenda item number 8, presentation of possible action on the status and approval of PEB contract amendments and solicitations. Carrie Eaton, Chief Financial Officer.
Hello, this is Carrie Eaton, Chief Financial Officer for the record. Item 8.1 is an overview of PEB's current contracts and no action is necessary. I'll move on to item 8.2.1. This is requesting that the board ratify a new contract with Capital Reporters. Capital Reporters has been the court reporter for PEB board meetings for many years. They did have a statewide contract through the State Purchasing Division that expired at the beginning of January. State Purchasing advised PEB that they were not going to renew any of the court reporting contracts and they were not going to go out to bid either. So all state agencies that needed that service should contract directly with those vendors. PEB staff followed the informal solicitation bid process in accordance with the state administrative manual because the contract has a value of less than $25,000 per year. PEB recommends the board authorize staff to contract with Capital Reporters for court reporting services. I will pause here for any questions.
Ms. Kelly, you have a question? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, no, my hand's still up from the last time. I'll lower it.
Okay, I didn't know if it was back up. Okay, thank you.
Chair Rob, would you like me to move on and approve the whole report in one or? Okay.
Please move on. We'll approve everything at once unless there's an exception.
Moving on, staff has nothing for ratification for items 8.3 and 8.4. Item 8.5 is the status of our current solicitations. None of the approved solicitations have yet been released. However, staff has began having several meetings with our actuary to gather information to create the RFPs for these solicitations. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Okay, any further questions on agenda item number 8? I'll take a motion.
This is Leslie. Move to approve item number 8 as recommended.
We have a second.
Arnold, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes unanimous. We will move on to agenda item number 9, public comment. Comments can be taken on this item and we will limit it to 3 minutes. Do we have individuals waiting for public comment?
One moment, Chair Rob, we'll get everything ready and get the slide up on the YouTube stream. So in case if anyone does want to call in, they can have a little bit of time too.
We'll give them time as part of the process.
As a reminder, Zoom is used for public comment only. This meeting is streaming live on YouTube if you just want to listen into the PEB board meeting. For those who have joined for public comment, your name or last 4 digits of the phone number will be announced and you will be advised you have been unmuted. As a reminder for those on the phone, please press *6 to unmute. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record and proceed with your comments.
Do we have any individuals wishing to make public comment?
Sarisa Greer, you have permission to speak if you wish to make public comment. Chair Rob, that's all we have for right now. You want to have me leave it up for a minute or so?
Let's leave it up for a minute or so. If there's a delay on the YouTube, I just want to make sure people can catch up if the need be. So we'll give it another minute.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, you haven't notified me we have any public comment. So we will close agenda item number 9, public comment, and we'll move on to agenda item number 10, and we will stand adjourned. Thank you today. I look forward to meeting you all in person, and nice meeting everybody on Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.